for his young age, by representing the human figure in what could be argued as more contemporary ways, or certainly in a way
paint
that
a
fits
rabbit
the alternative
hanging
scene
himself.
of downtown New York that everyone now wanted a piece of.
The
The early work of Basquiat would feature alongside other artists such as David Salle and Julian Schnabel, who would collectively popularize the exciting
Max.
movement
This is my
later to
dog,
be referred
Max.
to as
No,
the
no,
Neo-Expressionism.
don't treat that.
Jean-Michel, however, had a
What do you
particularly
want?
specific mission planned for him and his work. A lot of the imagery Basquiat was experimenting with during this time was heavily influenced by the personal and cold expression of the face, with eyes downcast and staring beyond.
Alright.
There is almost a violent energy that radiates from this piece, as if it's displaying the aftermath of the fight. It would be the following year of 1982 that his work would truly begin to make a global impact on the art scene, however, with more of his trademark skulls and multi-pattern faces beginning to appear in solo exhibitions. By this year, he was beginning to paint on canvas more regularly and releasing his work at as many as 6 solo exhibitions around the world. For example, in Kassel in Germany, Jean-Michel would be the youngest artist in history to be part of the International Contemporary Artist Extravaganza, known as Documenta. He would continue on to create as many as over 200 paintings during this period, seemingly creating art of any kind, at any time, in any place. This would also be the year in which an equally significant alliance would form between Jean-Michel and one of the most widely respected artists in the world. Contrary to popular belief, Basquiat would not meet Andy Warhol by sheepishly approaching the established pop artist with one of his bright and colourful postcards, whilst Warhol was having lunch at local restaurants. In fact, gallery artist and collector Bruno Bischofberger would later claim to have formally introduced the two artists to each other when he invited them to lunch late that year. Regardless of how the two would cross paths, his relationship between the young and exciting prospect and one of the greatest figureheads of the art scene would later prove to be life-changing for both of them. Outside of the art studio, Basquiat was still a regular face in the New York clubbing scene, able to make connections with virtually anybody, including Debbie Harry and Blondie, who would purchase one of his paintings for $200, considered to be a fortune to the then still modestly living artist. Jean-Michel may have now entered the art scene, stirred excitement, and even provided something new and unexpected, but something was still not right. Something unfixed and unchallenged lingered in the gallery rooms that Basquiat was desperate to express himself. To put it frankly, Basquiat felt no less alone, misunderstood, or insignificant in spite of his talent and success. Simply because he was a black man now trying to prove himself to an incredibly whitewashed industry, for lack of a better way of putting it. Up until this time, the art world was founded solely on white artists, displaying white figures inspired by white culture. And Jean-Michel, quite rightfully, felt alienated by it. Barely, if not at all, did African-inspired culture exist within the art world, even within the supposedly progressive modern art world of that period. Even though Jean-Michel was influenced by a wide range of Caucasian history, literature, and artists, it was absolutely imperative to him that black culture would become more normalized and celebrated within the art form. He would begin incorporating a lot of his African and African-American heroes in his paintings, such as African royalty and jazz and bebop musicians. He would also become incredibly protective of his work as his popularity continued to rise. By the time he had his own studio loft and had collectors knocking on his door nearly every day, demanding art from him, yet simultaneously asking for specific colors or imagery to match their furniture, for example.
The new way to own your brand with Wix Harmony. Build something that you own and others want to join. Create the way you think with Wix Harmony.
Oh. I didn't even know it was... bought 2 new sketchbooks just in case, even though I'm not really good at it, but whatever.
Basquiat had very little patience for such conversations, often resulting in him slamming the door on a lot of collectors' faces. Even if it potentially meant losing a check for thousands of dollars, he would not let anything hinder or corrupt his honesty in his craft.
Just keep
However,
eating these
by the
chips.
mid-1980s, whomever Jean-Michel would turn away would make very little difference. Basquiat was making as much as over $1 million a year from the sales of his artwork. Sometimes his entire collection would sell out in a single night. And the newfound friendship between him and Andy Warhol, in his eyes, was seen as the precious golden key to truly leave his mark in the more elite and glamorous
I'm
side
planning
of
to
the
go
art industry.
to
An achievement
the
that
Frida
Basquiat
Kahlo
was adamant
Museum in
to
Mexico
grasp.
City.
It would lead to them collaborating
Hopefully
with each
that
other from
will be cool.
1984 to 1986, such as 10 Punching Bags, Last Supper, produced between 1985 and 1986. Warhol would typically start the painting, creating an image distinctive to his style, with Basquiat later defacing and altering the painting to make it an intricate hybrid of pop art and neo-expressionism. Although some would be impressed with the results of one of the greatest working with one of the youngest and most promising, the vast majority of critics would unfortunately disagree, seeing the results as merely a desperate and out-of-touch attempt to commercialize a new trend and restore relevancy to a former star in art, but nonetheless was nowhere near his previous level of influence. To downtown New York, Basquiat was practically the king and hero of the underground scene. But as Jean-Michel wanted to push himself further into the realms of the greats, in bigger galleries and bigger museums, more of his work would be rejected, shrugged off by old-fashioned minded art critics and curators as overly simple or too primitive to match pre-existing masterpieces in the galleries Jean-Michel dreamed of. Even when collaborating with a household name like Andy Warhol, the confused or underwhelmed reactions from the artistic elite would remain the same, seeing this kid from the streets as just a graffiti artist who just got lucky. The term of graffiti artist would be one that Basquiat would absolutely resent.
And you're seen as some sort of primal expressionism. Is that? I mean, like maybe. Well,
You're just watching me eat.
a primate. Well,
Let's see how. Oh. Let's just embrace the horridness of my artistic ability, creating a unique perspective on the way I see things creatively. My horrid ways of artistic visualization. Well, I got 19. I'm also stoned. I took like Delta 9 edibles. It's not much, but it gets the job done. it's gonna be so awful looking, but I don't care because sometimes you just don't have to. Sometimes you just do art for the sake of it. It doesn't even fucking matter what anybody says, because fuck them. Your art is horrible. Well, I don't care. You paint like a retard. I don't care. It's the weird simplicity. I hope I don't reach. I hate when you can't sneeze. um yeah, I'm just not gonna care. I'm just gonna paint the absurdity that is my mind. I'm going to paint suicide in a perspective that I like to make, even though it's not that good, but whatever. I'm just not that good of an artist. I don't care. I hope you can see this pretty well. I'm pretty sure you can't. I mean, pretty okay. Even though I don't have an easel and those cost a lot of money and I am horrible with money. One of these days, my art's gonna be in a museum. Oh, well. I don't know about that. Oh, my neck.
Basquiat work represents a lot of different things.
I think Basquiat's image language and his painting language is really unique.
I think his paintings were very schematic. They were skeletal. They were always skeletal.
His work relates to a tradition that's really that was also emergent at the same time, which was hip hop.
It's not about only about the death. It's about the life.
In a way, he's more relevant today than any other artist in the 20th century.
My first introduction to Basquiat was in 1997 when I was a student in Ohio. And we were taking a field trip to New York, and it was my first time going to New York. And the movie that they played on the bus was Julian Schnabel's film, Basquiat, which at the time, not knowing New York and not really knowing that much about Basquiat, it was really exciting. I mean, I was really young. So I just thought I got more in work.
Ah, fuck.
Feeling as an artist from this figure my idea of what I thought this like.
I was going back to New York, or back to DC. I was in school in DC. And I read that he was having a show opening, but I was scheduled to fly out the next Saturday morning, and the show didn't open until Saturday evening. And so I decided to just go up to the gallery and see if I could see the work, in person. And this was a different time, like in the art world, it's just a totally different time. I just walked in casually, the doors were open. There was a person touching up the walls, and they were just painting around. The whole show was laid out, and another young white guy, I guess, who was working there. And I just sort of walked in and I said, hey, I'm really interested in seeing the work, but I gotta bounce. Like, can I come in? He's like, yeah, man, sure, just walk around. So I just walked, and I remember, like, in particular, like Chinese New Year's and some of those paintings were in the show. I mean, paintings that have kind of gone on to be kind of very well known. And I just sort of was casually walking around looking at the paintings. And this woman, white woman, older, not old, but older than I was at the time. She probably was in the early 30s or something. Came up to me and just started chatting. So interesting. We're talking. She's talking. It's like, you just want to say, you want to go get a drink? And I was like,
chips.
Shocked, like, what? And the guy who was working on the thing, he started laughing in the background, and she turned and said, this is not the artist. I said, no, it's not the artist. I don't look anything like Basquiat at all.
One of the times I think I first saw Basquiat was in Houston, but this was one of the first times I was really kind of moved by a Basquiat painting, and it's this skeleton riding a horse, and it was death. It's something about riding death. It's a horse, something like that, and the full background was silver. And I thought, I don't know, something about that movie, that painting gave me kind of chills on the way that it was painted, the kind of subject matter of it, and it felt almost like an icon, even though it was the opposite of that. But it felt very much like a painting I found much, much later in Palermo called The Triumph of Death. And
Napkin.
It has this similar kind of very, very different, that's a much more ornate, detailed painting from a very, very different period. But there's a similar kind of aspect of this kind of question of mortality and the precariousness of our lives.
Before I saw the work, I heard about him. And then I was saying, wow, I didn't heard about black guy, and I'm an African American doing painting, become farmer. No, I was like, I'm looking for someone like that anyway. But I was like so happy, because I can see myself in Jean.
I
think the first time I saw Southern work actually, it's like we kind of growing up in Brooklyn, we if you're like a young black kid, we kind of have similar biographies, Haitian dad, Brooklyn, blah blah blah. People kind of mention him, used to mention him super early on, but I kind of rejected him because I really hated like people ascribing something to me.
Oh, great. I need more white.
I heard when you're coming to Paris to do the show with Columbia.
Tell me I have to go to the store again.
You know, and then say, okay, I gotta go down. Your friend of mine say, yeah, you're gonna come. You know, you want to see the work in person. So okay, and I went there, and then first move to the gallery, I saw one tall black guy come to me. And then he started to say hi to me. And then they asked me what I'm doing. You know, I say, I'm a painter, I'm an artist. He said, I really want to see your work. Okay, we start like that. And then I say, okay. He said, no, now. I said, Jean, this is your opening. You know. He said, no, we gotta go. So we left. We went to my studio.
Basquiat felt too close to my bio, too close to like, and so I never really paid attention. And then I think
Fucking.
I can't really tell
God
which
damn it.
There was an exhibition at Gagosian, and there was one at the Brooklyn Museum, and both of those I went several times to, and there were these three images. I think it was called Famous Negro. It was just these black and white sketches of the head, and I just was so jarred by that. It was so graphic, but so just like exactly what it needed to be. That I kind of let my guard down. I was like, okay, this is it.
But I definitely remember the way he occupied a space similar to Michael Jackson. To try to describe this a little bit, like Michael Jackson is the first black person I knew who was in the public arena, like outside of sports, in the public arena in the way that he was. I mean, like 7 years old, Michael Jackson's 2-3 years older than me, and Basquiat was, we're 2 weeks apart. I'm November 30th, 1960. He's December first 2 weeks of 1960. So we're roughly almost the same age. So it's a lot of inside stuff it's very specific to a time period. So I know Michael Jackson existed him in a very similar way because there was no precedent for Michael Jackson at the time. You got like when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show in whatever 66 or 67, he was like 7 or 8 years old and ruling the stage and owning the stage, right? What I'm trying to say is like Jean-Michel was very similar to that. Later, because he's not preteen, but like he's 19, 20 when he first pops on the scene. So paying attention to his art wasn't just paying attention to Jean-Michel Basquiat, the person. It was paying attention to a person who really was like on the bleeding edge of what might be possible for black people in general.
Basquiat was formed in an era of art that's very different today is a few generations ago. So, for example, New York had all these. New York's interesting because it's not so much, at least back then, was divided by class or race or whatever. It was so much about your participation in certain cultural identities. So, in '68, for example, you had this Stonewall riot, and you happen to be gay, and you went into those disco clubs, it didn't matter if you were wealthy, you were white, you were black, you were Mexican, you were trans, you enjoyed that disco club was you were meeting each other in that cultural moment. And so Basquiat was very much like leaving his neighborhood, going into the city, and the Lower East Side was a very particular cultural moment. And that meant that you could be, as long as you participated in the codes of that culture, it didn't matter who you were really.
And his work relates to a tradition that's really that was also emergent at the same time, which was hip hop. Like, hip hop has become a ubiquitous global language of music now. It's something that is morphing and changing, and it's like, but the tools of hip hop, the structure of hip hop, the capability of sampling and restructuring and chopping and screwing, and all of that comes out of this moment in the 80s as well, in the late 70s, and Basquiat was coming out of that same moment.
One of the things I think that was always really an interesting kind of fact was the first #1 hip hop song. First time most people heard hip hop, and this was the rise of MTV, video, music, and all of that. Was Blondie's Rapture, and when that. Being creative.
¿Qué? ¿Qué? ¿Va? ¿Qué? En la casa. En la casa.
No vayas a andar allá en la calle, mijo, porque te llegan a parar y
No.
tienes confianza. ¿Eh?
No.
Luego, ¿por qué no fuiste a trabajar?
¿Ah?
¿Por qué no fuiste a trabajar? ¿Te dieron el día o lo pediste?
Me pidieron no trabajo este día.
¿Eh?
No me lo dieron.
¿No te lo dieron? ¿No lo pediste?
No.
Claro. Si me hubieras dicho no voy a trabajar, te hubieras venido y ya mañana te ibas temprano.
Ok, ya, ¿qué puedo hacer?
Pues ahí está, Jonathan, no vayas a ir allá, luego ya fuiste por tu cheque.
My dad called. Forgot that. He always calls me like.
It's a scene of a turntable, and the turntable.
He was calling me to see if I already went.
Harry, and she's rapping to Jean-Michel
Talk
Basquiat.
about how I didn't go to work today.
For the first time, most people hear hip hop without knowing. They're also looking at Basquiat.
It's pretty.
And I think that says a lot about.
We already went through it, and it kind of annoys me.
That here's Debbie Harry, who Madonna is looking at to understand how to become a pop musician, who also happens to be his girlfriend. And the time that people are now hearing the most dominant genre of music, he's the first person that they would have seen without knowing that they're seeing this guy.
I want to say all of that was coming out of a very politically repressive moment in the United States, similar to what we're going through now, except the Reagan years. They were really intentionally trying to roll back a lot of the gains from the Civil Rights Act in the late 60s that we lived through in the 70s. So you have these kind of leaps forwards and then this kind of reversal of things culturally in the United States. And Basquiat and hip hop and all artists working in that moment with that, he's one of the most well known, but he's also one of the only African American artists who got attention at that time.
When I was a teenager, my late teens, early 20s, there was no black artists in the art world. There were black artists, but not in the art world. And so when John Michel's thing popped the way it did, it was sort of like you couldn't quite understand it. It was a little like a person who was moving in a different sort of time-space continuum to everything that was around. And that's very, it creates a lot of pressure on you like when you were the only one. Same, it's like John Michelle said, I want to be the Jimi Hendrix of the art world. You have to be careful what you ask for. He is the Jimi Hendrix of the art world. He had this moment where it was a blast, it's undeniable, and he's dead at 27.
There's many things that I see in him that I think first thing, one of those things that I always say, that I've said a couple times, is today would use the word like foundational Black American. Basquiat isn't a foundational Black American. His dad is Haitian and his mom is Puerto Rican. Not that Puerto Rico is not part of America, but it's a very different American story and a Caribbean story. And so in many ways, the ability to be in spaces that if you were like a Black American kid from like the global your grandparents was from Alabama, you wouldn't feel as comfortable in the spaces that Basquiat felt comfortable. Very comfortable being in the genre, being in the art world, although that was much more complicated. I think if you were like quote unquote a foundational Black American, those spaces carry much more scars than if you're like kids of immigrants. And so, in a way, that's one of those things that is also true for me, is that I don't have as much of those scars or historical baggage entering those spaces. Neither do Obama, for example. Obama is like African American, his dad is from Kenya. So Michelle Obama has a very different relationship with those spaces, those quote-unquote white spaces, than Basquiat or Barack Obama or myself.
Jean-Michel was very curious about everything. You know, you want to know even food. You know, his dad was Asian, his mom was a Puerto Rican. You know, his other friend was a white boy. You know, everything. You know, Jean-Michel was like that. He was not. You cannot put Jean-Michel in the cage. No way. But he was special. Jean-Michel was special. I mean, he worked fast. That's the one thing. And then, second, he working all the time. You know, example, we went to the nightclub together when I moved to New York. He invited me to New York. We went to the nightclub. We went to the kissing birthday party. And then he's come to me and say, hey, listen, if you don't see me, don't look for me. I'll be home. And then 2 hours after I went back home, he was there working. I think he wanted to be the best. He wanted the best. And then also, you know, you gotta work 3 times, 4 times. Because it wasn't like it was not only one being like a black guy or something like that, but he knew it. He knew his position.
Well, the content of the work has a lot of the struggle of being a person of African descent in a context that is violent, that is pretty violent against that person, that culture, and that person, and that exhibits a lot of kind of, you know, bias against that person. So when you're experiencing that and negotiating that, a lot of what he's doing in the work, I think, and in his own sense of, I don't think there's one drawing that I've looked at that doesn't play with global consciousness, that's not playing with aspects of the subconscious and the social, the internal and the external. There are always what he's playing with, and
like a whippet casket,
text, words,
or a whippet thingy.
And systems. Like,
He's been doing whippets and he hung himself.
He's constantly interrogating all of that, I think.
It's America. Okay? He's a black person. He was open to other culture. He know his situation. You know. That's why you gotta be you gotta work 3-4 times. But you know that, you know. But I don't think you just want to build the work just for black culture. No, no. Jean-Michel is. Listen, if you listen, listen, Jimi Hendrix. Why Jimmy play? What do you think? Is it white? Is it boy? Is it white? Is it black? Is it what? No, it's Jimmy. That's it. Jean-Michel is Jean-Michel.
I think the question is Basquiat a black painter is an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I make this argument a couple times. I think we live in cultural states, not like, and I'm not saying that race isn't a thing that isn't really deeply important to how one understands oneself. But I think Basquiat really lived in a culture state, and that blackness was a culture state that he was in, but not so much his zone of living. I think there are many artists who live in the cultural state of blackness, which is an incredibly diverse, ever-giving thing. I think he lived in a cultural state of art in a weird way, like his, you know, when you're choosing to be in a certain culture state, I think it also means you choose who your parents are. So Rauschenberg, Warhol is as much as that as his parents, his uncles, as his actual uncles.
Right now, people are gonna think that looks like a penis.
But so was Miles Davis, and so was many of the other.
It's got a weird
great
penis-looking
artists,
tip.
Michelangelo, both historically and musically. And I think he exists in a culture state for many people today.
My first impression of seeing the series of the heads, I was really surprised. I mean, they're really pared down. They feel like the subjects are either going into them, like there's a head within a head, or like a helmet, or a mask, and then or a skull, and then all the energy that emanates out from them, like whether it's like mental states or thought, or heat, or pain, or smells, like everything that becomes this kind of non-physical, frenetic subjecthood that just emanates out from this head, from this container. And even with the eyes feel like they're kind of really socketed, and they're circled, and everything feels like they could be like robots, or some of them feel like they could feel like robots or Frankenstein kind of figures, and the body, it feels like it becomes a conduit for all of this emotional activity or emotional states.
However, at the heads was that it was a form that allowed so much of his curiosities to just be dumped into. And so sometimes you would see his heads as just formal experiments about just line and color. Sometimes you would see it as kind of biological explorations, biographical explorations, geological explorations. So I think he just allowed it cultural explorations. I think it just was a form that said, okay, I know this form, but any thought that I'm having at 10:01, I can dump it into this form.
As a painter, I see these drawings as very much like the depictions from an abstract painter.
Artist.
Like it's interesting with Basquiat. Basquiat because he'll use figures, but they always feel like they're talking about something that is sort of non-embodied, like which is something like almost like energy that's on the way to the next form, or they're in movement, and and the way that the gestures work are completely abstract. Like I feel like he's such an abstract painter, and there's a kind of wild energy to them.
I think in the heads there's this immediacy, but what's to me the most interesting about the heads is again this playing with with the idea of the consciousness, the subconscious, the kind of life and death. What happens in the liminal space or the intermediary space in between. It's that I think there's this constant play with that, skinless with skin. Very, very rarely do you actually have skin. It's usually the skeleton, but it's also the skeleton within an envelope, an abstracted envelope or something like that. And then the organs are kind of sometimes in, sometimes not, sometimes falling apart, sometimes not. So there's the brain, which is always drawn as some kind of like psycho-computer, pre-computer idea of the computer kind of thing.
When I look at Basquiat's heads, what comes to my mind is just like what we call them, heads. You know, if you say heads in the Black community, it doesn't just mean like literally, or mostly does not mean literally the head. What it means is like to think. It means to think. So like if like somebody's listening to John Coltrane or some music that's not like, you know, something that let's say the mainstream will be following. It says heads. Like, or if you're into like last night, I was having a conversation with people about Italian cinema. You could say those are heads. Cause that's like some Gnostic. There's a Gnostic dimension to it. You know what I mean? Particularly with Black folks, where we supposedly don't think, which is ridiculous, because we think harder than anybody, or else it wouldn't survive. You know what I mean? Thinking is part of, like, it's a life and death thing for us. It's not like whether you're a billionaire or not. It's like life and death for us thinking. So I think in his work there is the mention of that, like thinking in overdrive. And the heads are just kind of metaphors for that. Like, you know, I think there's a death thread in his work from the beginning. It's almost like, you know, his mom gives him Grey's Anatomy, he gets hit by a car, when he's a kid, he doesn't die. Like, there's an alternate universe where he died at whatever 12, 14 years hit, but he doesn't die. So, like, in a way, he's living almost in the after causal wake of not dying. So it haunts. It's like, this is like a sort of poetic reading of him, but it's haunting his life. The skeletons are haunting him from the beginning, you know? So the head thing is, it means to think intensely, meaning it's localized in the head. It also is clearly, just on the Haitian tip, it's a voodoo trope. You know, when you see Dambala, Elegba, there's a skull on the person's face. You know, I've said this recently, everybody's the skull trying to get out, you know? And his skull just got out quicker than anybody else. It's like you could see the skull trying to get out, trying to transcend like his physical limits from the beginning. And maybe that's just because in that moment when he got hit by the car and his mom gave him Grey's Anatomy, you know, he could have died or should have died. Who knows? But I think it's a clear strand in his work. So if I see a bunch of heads, that's like going to Naples and seeing a bunch of skulls in the crypts. That's kind of like just immediately without even being so deep about it. That's what it is. He's haunted by that. So
I think already the head you draw, they also spiritual way, because Jean he have a memory culture.
I'm really getting concentrated, I guess.
it's like I want to throw all the heads. It's not about only about the death. It's very deep. It's about the life, because it's not death is not the end. You know, death is a life. You know, for me, Jean, it was like a lot of people think about death. You never think about death. I think it's about a life. You know, just people get it in a sense, because we talk a lot about that. It's not about the death. It's a life. You take Asian culture, it's a voodoo, all those elements, it's about a life. Invisible, spiritual. That's it.
I think his kind of effort to make sense of this fucked up world and the beauties of the world and the joys of the world and all of that, and the body and himself and who he is, like that subconscious, all of that is kind of explored in those. So to me, yeah, it's like the edge of death, the edge of being feeling paranoid, the kind of space that is like also exuberant but also paranoid but also falling apart or also beaten up, or all of this comes out in the drawings. The poet, the kind of the Caesar, the falling from power, the fall of grace, all of this, you can think of all of these larger ideas as very, I think they're very apparent in the drawings, or come through to me.
There's this idea that, like, in painting, Matisse liberated color in the Western culture. So that's where you get, like, Albert
Shit, it
Kelly
looks
and
like
all
the
of those
swastika.
color field theory. I think Basquiat liberated this idea of the portrait and your face being a portrait. That it's much more now about anything, really. And in a weird way, I know this wasn't necessarily where his mind was at, but in 5 years, people will have meta glasses or whatever AI glasses, and your head could be anything that you choose it to be. And I will see your head how you want it to be. And it will be not about changing, your lips to be fuller or thinner or whatever, but like your head to be anything that you want it to be.
It's interesting that he kept all these drawings for himself, that they weren't shown. And that's a mystery to me. I know why I wouldn't show things. Or like I work on drawings and I'll keep them in the studio because they're kind of feel like they're closer to process than they are to a finished piece. Sometimes I don't even see them as art. But these feel like finished. So I was like looking to see like, did he sign them? Or like, how did he think about them?
If the drawings are these kind of explosions of energy or like bursts of creativity that just pour out, there's also to keep revisiting something is in a form is to challenge it, is to interrogate it, is to question it, is to kind of is like when something's nagging you, an idea, and you keep going back to that idea and you keep kind of mulling it over. That's part of that interrogation and that internal kind of investigation in the work, and I think that's what you can see what feels really apparent.
Oh
in the
shit.
drawings.
I think Basquiat's investigation.
You
in
draw a
ads,
computer.
One of the great sad
Oh, a TV.
things is that we never know what time would allow it to, as he became 30 years old, 35, and these things begin to form a meaning in a more concise way, a more like that. I don't know what have evolved to become. And
Put a TV
what
under
those things
there.
would have. What
Did I even talk?
stuck? What
Did I
would have
talk?
dropped? What you see
I don't
is
think
just
I
like
talked.
a constant like
Well, that's trippy.
exploration of so many different ideas. But ultimately, in such a unique
I
way.
think I'm high.
But ultimately, as we age, things stick and things fall off. And then the things that stick, we investigate
Maybe I
it
took
more
too
and more
much.
and more and more. It becomes much more who we are. Much more of a defining understanding of our quote unquote more mature self. I think the sad truth is we don't know what that would have been.
Because he has the sort of
I don't want to
there's a
eat no more
feeling,
chips.
an energy that's all his own, but it also feels like maybe coming from something from abstract expressionism, but then it's totally contemporary, and melding the world, like folding the world into it. And I was always really admired
Kinda fucked
how
up.
he was able to
Just go with it.
have this freshness and immediacy to his work, and that he would have these sort of bold planes of color, but then be able to incorporate all this drawing and different mark making,
2 doors.
and they just felt so free. So I think that was something that I thought was really inspiring about his paintings.
Because to a certain degree, and this is not to say anything except to point it out, his paintings were drawings, you know what I mean? Very lines, oil sticks, this kind of stuff. And I always like to say at a certain point, like in a way, in the same way that you see Gray's Anatomy and the skeletal nature haunting his work in general, thematically and formally. Like, I think his paintings were very schematic. They were skeletal. They were always skeletal. You know, they were always diagrammatic. They were like diagrams.
He was interested in systems and kind of interrogating them and trying to understand them, and then how can he put it back together, especially if the system is broken, especially if the system is carceral, especially if the system is enforcing. So I think he was interested in the system of something, but and how to disassemble that, and how does one invent a different one. But he was also interested in the fugitive, and I think you really see that in this work in the drawings is this place between, like I said, life and not living. And what does that mean? The kind of afterlife, meaning not living in the afterlife, but what happens to the body.
And then they also have to work purely visually too, you know what I mean? They have to just hold your eye, color, form, things like this. So that's something that I'm like acutely aware of in my work, and I'm thinking about it in my own work. Like, how do you make a painting, a picture that well, first of all, can just hold your attention, first of all. First thing it's got to do is hold your attention, whatever you think of it. How can it do that in a way that can match what Basquiat was able to do? Without, of course, because there's a whole industry of Basquiat imitators, you know what I mean? None of whom
Another one.
wrong with imitating great artists. The history of West
Great.
painting is people imitating.
I shouldn't eat
like
no
a
more
style,
chips,
like you
dude.
see that sort of Renaissance painting thing. It's a style. We see it, we know it like that. But so it's interesting to me just to think, like I said, how do you? All I was gonna say is think about all the imitators of Basquiat. That shit looks simple, but it's not simple. That's why there's not a single person who can point to who was able to replicate his thing and extend it that I know of. And I've seen a lot of people try. You always know immediately what they're imitating. At the same time, you know immediately it's not a Basquiat. They can't even be forged. People have tried to forge these things. Nobody's done it successfully because there are things in his work, like how his line functions. I'm not talking about what he's drawing or his drafting skill. His line is very specific. That's why you see like things like, you know, like he wrote on a memo in a hotel, I have to get ribs or something. It's not a drawing. You just roll out to get ribs. And the shit, in some ways, is just as visually interesting and startling as any complex drawing he did. That's because of his line. That's how his line functions. And in a way, like his extension of Cy Twombly, nobody's been able to extend him like he extended Cy Twombly, for example.
Jean-Michel, I mean, work otherwise in the studio. I mean, even in the room, the bedroom. You guys are like make me all the drawing and then watch the TV sometime. Talk on the phone, walking. I think that, yeah, absolutely.
Oh fuck! Why does he send it?
I'm throwing this shit away. I'm not
Because
eating
there is
it anymore.
So many
I don't care.
things to say. Well, there is so many things to say. So many.
What?
Oh, I just want to see the
Culturally,
Oh.
politically, spiritually, and then you don't stop. You want a better life for people.
I'm tired.
Outside work represents a lot of different things. I think on one end, we are living in a hip hop moment. That's a cultural, that's like the global culture. Global culture that is
Dumb painting I did. Oh shit, bro.
And the person who made
God
one
damn
of the
it.
most brilliant artworks at the very beginning of that is Basquiat. So in a way, he's more relevant today than any other artist in the 20th century.
I think Basquiat has influenced so many artists, and so many non-artists too, like people who are kind of outside of the art world or in different strains of artistic process, like fashion or music. And I think he's had such a cultural impact.
He's the bar, just like he's the bar. He's the bar in terms of like person actualizing anything. Like even though he had a relatively short lifespan, you can't look at that work and not just not be amazed by the scope of it. It's just like even if you don't like it, you still cannot deny the potential.
Oh my god,
And
where's the
breadth of it,
purple?
in such a short period of time. It doesn't even matter. If he had done that line work for 20 years,
Oh, there it
it
is.
would have been the same. It wouldn't have been any different. It's an undeniable body of work.
You'll go through museums and you'll see work, paintings of all these different natures, and that are kind of in a room with contemporaries of other artists. But somehow that one Rembrandt calls you to, or that one Caravaggio or Rubens or whoever it is, Veronese, or you just get called to certain paintings. And I think that's what's really interesting is what work does that. What work really, not just in kind of suggests a time period, but also goes way past that, and kind of reaches
Hate finding
reverberations
things.
that we all are kind of a part of in this, whatever you want to call it. The undercommons kind of there's a kind of connectivity between us, and I think that, yeah, definitely Basquiat's work, I think, has moments of really connecting in that way.
That's why people gotta focus on his work, because the work is so powerful. Sometimes people they don't look the work because it become it's too big stuff, But I think people really gotta see to read his work, And a lot of young artists they love Jean-Michel. They love his work.
I think Basquiat suffers from something that many artists who get to a certain level suffer from, where people don't necessarily think about how brilliant Frida Kahlo was. Like, if you ever, because she's so famous,
Simpsons TV. Simpsons ass TV.
You become unaware that they're not just famous, and we live in a place where people are just famous to be famous. You know, many people that we know of today who are the most successful people in life are just famous because they're famous, not because they actually did anything culturally or whatever. And so Basquiat suffers from that, where he's on the verge of just becoming this thing that's a shorthand for his biography, but not how brilliant he was, that allowed that success to happen. So I think anytime you're doing an exhibition that is extremely considered about his genius, and doesn't sort of, it's not about the fame, but just like this is someone who was extremely studious, and was brilliant. That's why they became big, famous. And it wasn't about hustling the system or whatever. Lecture was really brilliant. I think that ends up like becoming a really important thing. I think that's sort of what we need is, wow, these people were smart, and, you know, see the work, yeah, just see the work and see how smart they were.
Years are all dowry. Traitors. Taken undone. No chance.
It's the end of cuffing season, and I'm being subtle about it. We got the custom bracelet, a low-key custom phone case, the wallet, this beautiful toad, and the cap. And I found them all on Etsy.
There's like the Jean-Michel Basquiat, who is this profound painter and creator, and then there's Jean-Michel, our brother, Jean-Michel, our parents' son.
I marvel at his genius and the creativity that he had, but then I really just kind of cherish those moments that we had and can't really believe that this is the same person.
My name is Lisanne Basquiat.
My name is Janine Haribo. We were there during the life and times of our brother Jean-Michel Basquiat. Jean-Michel was born December 1960 in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Eventually, we ended up on 35th Street in the East Flatbush section of Brooklyn.
It was really a very old Brooklyn neighborhood where kids would play on the street and we'd play hopscotch and double dutch and the ice cream truck would come down.
As a child, I would describe Jean-Michel as curious, mischievous, playful, quite the prankster. So he would do things like leave bugs on our bed and make coffee and tell us to drink it, and it may not have coffee in it.
We were kids, it was summertime, and there was some kind of a block party or something happening. And there was watermelon on the table, and our mom was cutting the watermelon up. And so Jean-Michel says to me, he says, you should eat the watermelon seeds because if you eat them, then when you sweat, you'll sweat watermelon juice. All you have to do is stick your tongue out and you'll be able to just like drink watermelon juice all the time. And my greedy behind, I did it. It's ridiculous. So we three are the children of a Puerto Rican mother and a Haitian father. My father came to this country when he was less than 20, and he used to tell the story that he came to this country with a toothbrush in his pocket and couldn't speak the language, and it was cold. And then our mom was from Brooklyn and Puerto Rican, and so we grew up with children. One of the things that our mom did was she brought Jean-Michel to the Brooklyn Museum to ensure that he got a membership card. And so he became a member at a very, very young age.
Jean-Michel had difficulty in high schools because he was one who just didn't really excel in kind of the traditional setting. And I think that his mind was genius-like, and he was just bored. And so because of that, he tended to get in trouble with his teachers because he couldn't stay focused.
But right around the time when we turned 17 was when he actually left. Our father came from Haiti, where you are successful when you are a white-collar attorney, doctor, accountant, or when you're in business. Just imagine being a teenager and telling your Haitian parent that, no, I'm not going to be a businessman like you envisioned for me. I'm going to go and do this other thing that's risky, that's never been done before. And so he went off to go and do that. So it was a very stressful, strained, and scary time for both of them. I realized that things were starting to unfold for Jean-Michel when I went to a show that he had at the Adina Mosaic Gallery. He invited us all to this opening that he had, and it was like filled with the kind of thing that you would see on TV, where it was like a gallery and there were all these like beautiful people around. And it was then that I really started to recognize that he was really doing well and making this happen for himself.
It is a huge misconception that Jean-Michel left home and never saw us again. When Jean-Michel came back,
Make
he
this
knew
look even
that
weirder
he had
and
to
creepy.
come back
Not creepier, I don't know about that, but edgy.
and which is what he did. He had a show. He showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he rang the doorbell in a limousine, tired, with these huge dreadlocks that he didn't have when he left. And the first words out of his mouth was, "Goodbye, made it." I think that was a very proud moment for him to show my dad that I had a purpose. I was determined to do this, and I did it successfully.
Jean-Michel loved movies and books and music. He had a wall full of videos. He was an avid reader.
Jean-Michel was a world traveler. He was a collector of various things, from other artists' works to baseball cards, and he just had so many different interests. Jean-Michel hung out a lot. It was kind of part of that time period. So he was at the Mud Club, he was at Aria, he was at the Palladium, and he was frequently at Mr. Chow and going to other art exhibits and galleries. It was a fast-paced life. It was a partying life, and it was fun. If there was something that he was interested in, he dove right into it. Doing the runway in Paris from the Garçon, being in a noise band, really kind of immersing himself in food and culture and travel, the DJing,
rituals,
Shine, shopping online. Download now.
I think Jean-Michel was really trying to break through the barrier and the constriction of the way that Black people were being portrayed at the time. It was like there was one story for every Black person at the time, where it was like a kid grows up in poverty, is exposed to certain things, and he himself was a child of an immigrant father, and he grew up in a upper middle class lifestyle. And it frustrated him that there seemed to be this very singular way of looking at people living the Black experience. And he really wanted deeply to broaden that view. And I think he also was very clear about who he was as a black man and the way that he portrayed himself through the symbolism of a crown. He knew
I'm
that he
done
was
with this.
royalty. He knew that he was valuable. His success also, in a lot of ways, took him outside of his circle and into another circle where he, in some ways, was alone. Jean-Michel was frustrated at times at having to defend not as much his work, because his work is phenomenal. What he did have to defend was himself. He had to defend his identity. He had to defend the image that people wanted to have, where they wanted to pigeonhole him into, for example, being a black artist. And he wanted to be seen as an artist. He wanted to be respected as an artist. He was very frustrated at the questions that would be posed to him. Like, I remember this one interview, and I don't remember who it was with, but he defended the fact that he was an artist in residence versus the way that he was being portrayed, that he was like this wild guy with dreadlocks
In the
in a basement where they were like throwing food down to him. And so he was given this kind of dual role of introducing his artwork to the world and also having to defend his humanity.
The collaboration show between Jean-Michel and Andy Warhol, for whatever reason, received really negative press, and the critics were not kind to the work and to Jean-Michel, and some of the words really dug deep for him and really affected him mentally, and he pulled away from a lot of people. He distanced himself from Andy, and then shortly after that, with Andy's passing, that really, really hit him hard. I called him to express my condolences. He could really barely talk on the phone. And so I think those two things just had him at a place where he felt alone.
And I think that that's probably one of the things that hurt the most, was that he was in that place and was feeling that way right around the time that he passed away. You know, for years afterwards, I would think, you know, if he could have just, you know, seen himself around that corner. He had a family, and we all loved each other very, very much, and we all still do. Ultimately, you know, we lost a brother, and our parents lost a son, and that's very tough to live through. It has been humbling and mind-blowing to see people from all walks of life, from all over the world, who have all of these stories about their own struggles with their own identity, and then having discovered this artist named Jean-Michel Basquiat and what that did for them, or how that has affected them.
For me, the best thing is knowing that Jean-Michel is proud and smiling and happy, and seeing that we are making sure that his voice is brought to a younger audience, and making sure that his work is being seen by those who may not have the opportunity to get to a museum, who may have never been to a museum, but are interested in seeing work of someone that looks like them.
I gotta stop getting stoned. Just get so paranoid.
Look
goes between the different models.
And it's always backed by sources, so it feels trustworthy.
I tried Perplexity, and I got rid of my other AIs, and I just use Elephant.
Yeah, I canceled ChatGPT and Claude a long time ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm actually gonna download it right after we finish this interview. Thank you so much for the recommendation. Actually, I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna do it right now.
The Fun Gallery was begun in 1981 by Bill Stelling and the underground movie actress Patty Astor. While acting in the movie Wild Style, Patty met graffiti writers like Fab Five Freddy, and the Fun Gallery soon became a top showcase for the best in graffiti from Manhattan and Brooklyn.
How'd you get involved with graffiti?
Coming down to East Village, and I was looking at the stuff on the trains, and I met them at parties.
And what, you thought it was the most interesting art going, or the art that had the greatest potential?
Well, no, I just thought they were good artists. I know a lot of good artists, and I thought they were good artists too. I never really distinguished between graffiti and art, really.
Would you consider graffiti a mainstream art or mainstream culture?
Well, I don't understand what's the difference between mainstream. I mean, just like the gallery, I never wanted to be considered an alternative space. I don't understand really the meaning of that word. I think that it can be appreciated by just about anybody. We've had shows all over the world, and a lot of some of these paintings in this show here have already been sold to banks to put in their corporate headquarters, like this one. And I think that a lot of people when we are known a lot as a graffiti gallery, although I think as our other artists are starting to get more well known, that's changing. Because I never really sought to be a graffiti gallery or market it as graffiti at all. It's just art. And I think that a lot of people, when they come down, we finally get them down to the gallery and do a little education. They're very surprised by what they see when they get here, because they're just expecting a big bunch of throw-ups or something like what you see on the trains. I think if you have something worthwhile to offer, you're going to outlast any trend. And that's one reason why I've always tried to, as I said again, just present this just as art, because I think that it's a big responsibility to tell someone that you think they can be an artist and support them, and I don't have no intention of having these guys
Oh, fuck.
left in the lurch after 2 years. I think there's a lot of people around that have every intention of doing that. They
Oh,
don't
that
care.
looks cool.
And
It's like it's bleeding.
just as I said, there's good artists and there's bad artists. The good ones
Oh,
will last
wow.
and prevail. We were the first gallery
Just
to
got an
show
idea.
individual
It's
artists
fucked
from
up.
graffiti in individual shows to differentiate that there's not just like graffiti. There's individual people who are artists who have very individual styles that are doing that, and we were the first gallery to give them one-man shows so that people
Oh, yeah.
could see their individual styles.
My name is actually Fred Brathwaite, but all my friends call me Fab Five Freddy.
That referred to five graffiti artists?
Well, mainly the Lexington Avenue number 5 train, which the Fab Five, namely Lee, Doc, Mono, and Slade, and Slug made famous for doing elaborate, trains, so whole cars. I haven't done any graffiti since early 1980. Basically, what I do now is just produce, paintings, stuff like that.
What's the difference of doing it on trains and doing it on canvas?
You can't do graffiti on canvas unless you're doing it in an illegal context. Graffiti is illegal; it's a crime, and it's like a teenage street activity in New York, which is really wholesome. It's like baseball, stickball, punchball, tag, bring a levy up. It's a street game, particularly when I see myself and my fellow artists that showed at the Fun Gallery, mainly Dondi, Sepher, and a few Tour 2000, what we do is really a lot different from what we've done. What we basically, people just like to throw the word graffiti around because, of course, it sounds like, you know, illegal or Robin Hood or whatever. But it's not about that for us, you know. Well, basically, what I'm doing with this show is what I call still lifes in space. You know, basically paintings that I wanted to make for a long time, but didn't have time to make them because I just was, you know, I did a movie, Wild Style, and I made a couple of records. But they just came out, and about 2 weeks of painting.
This is Jean-Michel Basquiat, a Brooklyn-born 23-year-old of Haitian Puerto Rican descent, whose rapid rise from street graffiti artist to international art figure has been one of the cultural wonders of the 1980s. In 1982, the prolific Basquiat seemed to be in every group show on Expressionism, had solo exhibitions at major galleries in Soho, Zurich, and Los Angeles, and still had the energy to produce this large show at the Fun Gallery in New York's East Village. The Fun Gallery specializes in graffiti art, and Basquiat's exhibition was a special event that demonstrates that he still identifies with his unique artistic roots. Graffiti artists express themselves by quickly drawing words and pictures on public walls, and although he has moved to paint on canvas, Basquiat has maintained a similar spontaneous approach. With little inhibition, the self-taught artist splashes paint, draws, crosses out, and draws again. This work is called Jawbone of an Ass, and it has Basquiat's familiar mix of words, pictures, and abstract brushwork. His crude images, like this carnivorous bird, may seem naive, but they reveal basic truths and are filled with knowing humor. On the upper left, Basquiat has crossed out the words Rodin's thinker and has painted a contemplative black youth in a ghetto hat. In the center is a list of names, mostly from ancient history. In simple block letters, Basquiat has written Alexandria, Hector, and Aristophanes, names which not only connote glories of the past, but also remind us of school and our own enculturation. Some names have been crossed out or deliberately misspelled, and when we read the names, we can almost hear their sound. Basquiat creates concrete poetry, and his art has been reproduced in literary publications like the Paris Review. We asked Basquiat about the words in his paintings.
Where did the words come from?
Real life books, television.
Yeah, and you just skim them and start including.
No, man. When I'm working, I hear them. You know, I just slow them down.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean things like Punic Wars. I remember that was in one of your.
Oh, but that was from a guidebook on Roman history.
And you had been reading it and.
Well, it wasn't that long, that natural history part of it. It's like, you know, history of Roman 5 pages, you know.
Yeah. And so you snatched a few words from it.
Yeah. I didn't snatch them, you know.
They caught your.
They caught my eye, and I took them.
This painting is another mix of loosely connected notations. With words and pictures, Basquiat plays with the basic theme of anatomy and the human body. Showing his street smarts, he has named this painting Da Vinci's Greatest Hits, an allusion to Leonardo's famous anatomy studies at the Royal Library at Windsor Castle. One body part that Basquiat seems especially fond of is the foot, and this painting is filled with disarming, fresh drawings of feet, seen from every direction. Basquiat learns about anatomy by studying traditional art, and in the upper right corner there is a reference to the return of the prodigal son, and a drawing of the son's leg as he kneels to beg his father's forgiveness. On the left side of the canvas is some abstract brushwork, and below that is a huge leg. The red, blue, and black lines remind us of diagrams on medical charts. The distortions of the foot are especially gross and seem influenced by another childlike artist, Picasso. Below the foot, a man works on a railroad. Hammering spikes is hard work, and it is no wonder this man has a muscular torso. A torso has shoulder blades, ribs, and a spine, as we can see in this carefully labeled anatomical drawing. By focusing on anatomy, Basquiat resurrects a basic mode of art that anyone can relate to. This painting is filled with cleverly drawn pictorial references, and it is funny, smart, expressionistic satire. We asked Basquiat about his interest in anatomy.
I wanted to do some anatomy stuff.
And
then I went out and bought some books that are about anatomy.
And then you started imitating.
Well, not really imitating, because I use them as a source material.
So why'd you want to do anatomy stuff?
Because I felt like it.
Because you felt like it, or just becoming conscious of your own body?
No, just for more academic references to juxtapose them with what I do normally.
Yeah, and what do you say you do normally? That you're,
I guess my first instinct would be to do a head.
Here, on quilted bedding material, painted a bright yellow and tied to a wooden frame, is the expressive face of a black man. Basquiat knows black culture, and this unstretched canvas depicts the black middleweight boxing champion, Sugar Ray Robinson, complete with a crown like those used in graffiti signature tags. Graffiti artists draw their images on any surface, and for Basquiat, this has resulted in an inventive attitude towards the traditional stretch canvas. This canvas has become a hotel with 200 rooms, and it is named after 2 Fleabag hotels and a fancy one on Fifth Avenue. This 3-part painting is all about food, and we can again see the playful way Basquiat expresses a basic theme with deceptively simple drawings and words. To the left, he has written swine and poultry, slightly atypical words which seem to imply a double entendre. Since a chicken lays eggs, it's worth dollars, so it is not surprising that this crudely drawn chicken looks frightened. Off to the right is some pork dressed in a top hat and monocle. Basquiat probably copied this picture from a comic book or animated cartoon. The pig may look sophisticated, but he better not forget that he's 100% pure meat, and that means he's worth money. When we visited Basquiat's downtown studio, we talked about the content of one of his recent canvases and gained new insight into the way this amazing young artist fuses far-flung imagery into striking, humorous, expressive paintings.
It's just, what's this?
It's based on a drawing that was the first drawing of the moon by Galileo.
And so this is actually an image of the moon there.
But actually, it's an image. Actually, it's an image of the moon. No, it's based on a drawing of the moon, but it's an image of Pluto.
Yeah. This looks like an eye.
Yeah. That's the evil eye of Pinocchio.
And below there, what's this down there?
That's a Roman belt buckle. This says parasites.
Parasites.
Yeah.
And parasites meaning people?
No, meaning parasites.
Meaning parasites. So when you're working on this, this Roman belt buckle, how'd you decide to?
Oh, I've got someone drawing. I did the Metropolitan, a Roman belt buckle that was bronze.
And so you just decided you wanted to put a Roman belt buckle there and went to your drawing?
No, I wanted to put a Roman belt buckle on this painting, right? I had the idea to do it, and then I went over to the Metropolitan Museum and I did the drawing of the buckle, and I came back with it and I put it right there.
Well, that's kind of a slow process.
I'm a slow person.
shape of the mouth and the teeth. And I like the, you may say, the glitter and colour that comes from the mouth. And I've always hoped, in a sense, to be able to paint the mouth like Monet painted a sunset, but I've never succeeded in doing it. But I was also very influenced by the Eisenstein film Potemkin and the Odessa sequence, which is this wonderful shot of the nurse screaming. And also, when I first went to Paris, I found in an old bookshop a book on diseases of the mouth, which was beautifully coloured, hand-coloured. The plates were hand-coloured, and they had a tremendous effect on me. And I don't know if this obsession when I was much younger with the mouth has a lot of sexual implications, people say they have, and I believe psychologically it's supposed to. But anyhow, whatever it was, I lost that time very obsessed by that image.
So you might well have been interested in painting open mouths and teeth, even if you hadn't been painting the screen.
I think I might.
Nevertheless, you did become involved with painting the English screen.
I did, and I've always hoped to, I've always wanted and never succeeded in also painting the smile, but I've never been able to do it.
Actually, in your work as a whole, there are relatively few paintings that are ostensible subjects which might be thought horrific. And most of them are fairly straight subjects of figures seated in rooms and so on. And yet people have a sense that your work as a whole is horrific. Why do you think this might be?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, when they say the carcasses of meat, it's true that when you go into a butcher's shop, you see the beauty of the meat, how beautiful meat can be. But when you think about it also, you can see the whole horror of life, of one thing leading off another, and the natural pattern of life, and the natural sequence of life. I mean, it's why when all these stupid things about bullfighting, because if you go, people will eat meat and then complain about bullfighting. Things so mad, they will go in and complain about bullfighting covered with furs and birds in their hair. It's so illogical.
But yet people's sense of your work as being horrific is not really justified by the...
It's time for Operation America 250. Yeah. We're gonna go see young Washington.
There is somewhat of a personal experience when looking at the self-portrait of an artist, not only because it allows the viewer to put a face to the masterpieces that the artist has created, but it also offers a glimpse into how the artist represents themselves, or more specifically, it allows the viewer to witness how the artist sees themselves. It's a very intimate and self-exploring experience for the artist to muster up the willpower to illustrate their own face, to stare for long periods at every little detail of themselves, studying every feature, every blemish, every wrinkle, every freckle, every scar. It can even help a creator to find better self-confidence into how to tackle their insecurities, or better comprehend how they felt when sketching or painting themselves in a certain theme or scenario, which is why they also, in a lot of special cases, can offer us lessons and stories that can prove to be invaluable as time passes. But in a world as limitless as the art world, boundaries are constantly being pushed, and the more they are, the more I get nosy, which is probably how I eventually became familiar with the American artist named Brian Lewis Saunders, a man who not only creates many fascinating self-portraits, but has in fact, till the day of me uploading this very video, made at least one self-portrait every single day since March 30th, 1995. As a result, Brian's increasing collection of self-portraits consists of over 13,000 individual sketches, paintings and drawings of him, portrayed in various themes and moods, basically serving as an artist's journal or diary, capturing very specific chapters in his life, inspired by some of his happier darkest experiences. The more I looked into Brian's story, the more I discovered just how much he endures to create his art. From him illustrating every headache he's had for over 20 years, to brief periods of creating self-portraits under the influence of countless types of drugs and intoxicants. As Brian himself perfectly summarizes, like fingerprints, snowflakes, and DNA, they are all different. No two daily self-portraits are the same. I put the world around me into representations of myself, as I find this more true to my central nervous system, and how we all process and perceive experiences. I am more concerned with channeling experiences than I am collecting memories, but I do both, and much more. And on that note, a warm welcome to all of you to another video. Today, I'm excited to explore with you the multi-faces of Brian Lewis Saunders. Brian Lewis Saunders was born in 1969 in Washington, D.C., USA. Once describing his childhood as, quote, colourful, for the majority of his earliest years, he would live with his single mother and occasionally in the summer with his grandparents. According to Brian, he first picked up a pencil and drew a circle at age 1, only for a week or two to pass when he would start drawing eyes in them. By the time he would first start attending school, he was already excelling as a young student, being put forward for many gifted and talented programs. This would all begin to change as he would continue to age, however, as he was finding himself less and less interested in school as his home life became a little more complicated. Very often he would be home alone after coming home from school, having to carry a house key around his neck on a red lanyard that Brian would say would be incessantly itchy and uncomfortable from wearing it all day. At rare times when he would lose the key to his house, he would have no choice but to break in, learning from his mother how to break in with a knife through the kitchen window if ever necessary. By age 10, Brian's life outside of school was starting to become far more hectic. He would begin getting in trouble with the police, as while other kids in his neighborhood were called home by their parents, Brian would continue to stay late out on the streets whilst his mother would still be at work, sometimes arriving home late drunk. Up until this time, Brian was hanging out in an
I'm tired.
Hi, I'm Ian. My job is Marketing Ops and Analytics, which means I help the marketing team market better with the help of data. This used to be pulling data from a half dozen places. With Claude Cowork, I drop in the week's context, Claude pulls and verifies the data, and I steer the narrative. Once everything looks right, I say ship it. Claude finalizes the document that the team will read before the review, and writes the Slack message for the team channel. Any follow-ups become Asana tasks, so nothing falls through the cracks. Finally, Claude creates a leadership slide from the same data and narrative. One last thing. I asked Claude what we learned during this week's process that should go into the skill for next week. That new sales team structure, the corrections I made, all get saved. Claude updates the skill, and because it's a skill, I can share with the team so anyone can run it, get the same results, and dive deeper using Claude Cowork.
What you want to do is save hundreds with Liberty Mutual.
Shit, I'm so stoned I forgot to skip the ad.
Can you ask your friend to stop digging into the green?
Not gonna happen.
If you were to search for artwork by Brian Charnley, what follows is a collection of unhinged and chaotic scenes, shocking yet gripping insights into the world of mental disintegration. Charnley's unmistakable use of extreme, sometimes violent surrealism is very recognisable in the world of outsider art. But the work that stands out to most people is his 17 final self-portraits alongside a diary that document the tragic story about the struggles of him with schizophrenia right up until his final days before committing suicide in July 1991. In this video, we're going to explore the mind of this troubled yet talented artist, as well as the final self-portraits that reflected a mind so desperately in decline. John Charnley was born on the 20th of September 1949 in Stockton-on-Tees. With his twin brother, he grew up in London, Chislehurst in Kent, Cranfield, where his father worked as a senior lecturer, and finally in Bronham near Bedford. The frailty of Charnley's mind was made evident at an early age. In the summer of 1968, aged 18, he suffered a nervous breakdown but was able to study at Leicester School of Art later that year. He gained a place at the Central School of Art and Design in Holborn in 1969, but was unable to complete the course due to another breakdown later diagnosed as acute schizophrenia. This uncontrollable mental condition would cling to him for the rest of his life. From 1971 until 1977, he lived at home with his parents between periods of hospitalization and treatments, including ECT. In 1978, he moved to Bedford and began painting. The first paintings were representational works, including large flower paintings. From 1982 onwards, his work began to address his inner life, such as dreams and mental states, particularly in the nature of schizophrenia. Charnley's work would begin to receive some recognition within the London art scene throughout the 1980s. However, the little recognition that he received was outweighed by the day-to-day problems of his illness and the heavy medication that he was prescribed to counter it. Another stem of his delicate mental health towards the end could be linked with his relationship to Pam Jones, who featured in one of his most famous paintings called Pam and I in 1982. Due to suffering mental illness herself, she attempted to commit suicide in 1987 by jumping out of a window. Although she survived, the fall caused serious damage to her spine. The incident would deeply affect Charnley, which was made apparent in his later painting called Leaving by the Window, which served to replay the traumatic scene of the event. The beginning of Brian Charnley's final work and mental decline was marked by this simple and formal self-portrait signed on the 11th of April 1991. In addition to this, Charnley was encouraged by sane mental health charity executive Marjorie Wallace to keep a diary that would also help explain the imagery. The entry that Charnley provided for this portrait is as follows. Conventional portrait painted in 2 sittings. Is it a good likeness? Drug dosage was 2 3mg tablets of Dipixol daily, plus 2 25mg of tryptosol. I was sleeping a lot. As you can see, the signs of a powerful, unpredictable mental state is drastically evident in this portrait compared to the first one. In Charnley's diary, he wrote the following entry. The person upstairs was reading my mind and speaking back to me to keep me in a sort of ego crucifixion. I felt this because I was discharging very strong vibrations which could easily be interpreted. I tried to express this in the painting. The large rabbit ear is because I was confused and extremely sensitive to human voices, like a wild animal. The next portrait, completed on the 23rd of April, takes on a very uneasy and bewildering turn. The portrait is done in a very primitive style, virtually unrecognisable as Charnley's previous paintings, displaying a character's face with eyes and mouth crossed out, as well as what appears to be 2 dates that have also been crossed out. The face is surrounded by a disordered array of different colours and shapes, possibly to reflect the madness of the world around him. In his diary, Charnley entered the following. I had come to the conclusion that most people around me had some extrasensory perception ability which gave them access to my mind. In this respect, I was like a blind man, hence the crosses on the eyes. They also let me know verbally what they had picked up from my thoughts. I was like a dumb man in this respect, and hence the cross over the mouth. I crossed out dates because I was becoming obsessed that I'd taken 2 sittings rather than 1 on the first portrait. The following day, Charnley completed his next portrait that would continue to express his mental collapse. What is featured is a face, again done in a primitive style, that appears to have the mouth drawn over with opposite expressions several times, with a smoking pipe resting out of it. The face is surrounded by black horn-like shapes, apparently the horns of extrasensory perception, functioning as grinning mouths, possibly reflecting the feeling that people are constantly watching and constantly smiling in a menacing way. The most shocking feature in the painting lies within the head of the portrait, which is the blood of Charnley himself, indicating the sheer desperation of his mental state at the time. In his diary, Charnley advised the following. spots on the brain of the head are real blood to try and get over the mental pain I was experiencing. I was smoking heavily, hence the pun. No eyes to see what is really going on, and a stitched up mouth. The blood is my own. I stabbed the base of my thumb, not the kind of thing you're able to do on tranquilizers. Still on only one tablet of Pixel and a sleeping pill, but no, I cannot go on much longer.
Shine. Shopping online. Download today and get started.
People on Depop really watch your style. Sell your clothes and make even more money with no selling fees. Download now.
The next portrait, dated on the 29th of April, shows a manic scene of disjointed facial features and beams of colour. The phrase "love is strange" can clearly be seen in the far right-hand side of the painting, yet another phrase underneath it appears to be hastily painted over, possibly due to the overly compulsive nature of Charlie's mental condition. A cigarette can also be seen in the painting, continuing the theme of subsequently being crossed out. This is made more clear in Charlie's diary. Things had really been getting out of hand. A strange spiritual force was making me feel like I shouldn't smoke, or I would incur a disaster. This was driving me crazy, as I am normally a heavy smoker. I kept taking high dosages for the next few days, but nothing was really having any effect. I felt I might have to go to the hospital. On May 22nd, it is made clear that Charlie's focus is dwindling further, as his portraits seem to lose consistency, becoming less like self-portraits, more like an inward scenic view of his mind. With more features displayed, such as insectoid themes that would become more prevalent in his later portraits. Some themes seem to be continuing, such as his smoking habits and his use of glaring eyes in the distance. In his diary, Charlie explained the following. I was almost completely without energy. This explains the simile technique. I hadn't the energy for anything else. This is expressed by the pupa, a torpid state in insects. The spirit expressed by a bird is crushed by the magnet. My Oedipus complex is represented by the hooded phallus. My complex of thought is expressed by the mind with two heads, one is a nose. The clothesline is to say that all my dirty washing or thoughts are on display. Split crosses are a reference to my schizophrenia, being a type of
In this poetic detail that almost seems too
Cigarette.
incredible to be believed, during the crash, her clothes
Cigarette.
were torn off, and someone on the bus was traveling with a packet of gold powder that got ripped open. The gold powder lands on her, and she is just lying
I'm
there.
gonna go smoke.
This is
I should really stop smoking, honestly. It's kind of getting tired of
the helplessness of an infant.
all the tar that's inside of this shit. I don't want to smoke anymore, but I need nicotine, and going to Idaho is way too far, and Utah banned vapes, which is stupid.
She attaches a mirror to
I need to get my nicotine. What the fuck was that?
bed canopy directly above her. Time passes, her artistic skills improve, and eventually, amazingly, she learns to walk again. Both her art and her clothing are more European in style in this era, even when she's experimenting with men's clothing and wearing three-piece suits. Until she reconnects with Senor Rivera. Now, Frida had already been into radical politics
American spirit.
when she was a teenager.
Back. State. Oh yeah, let me smoke the cigarette.
Appearances can be deceiving. Indeed, they can. Remember when I said that there was another twist in the Frida Kahlo story? Well, here we go. The unsealing of the locked room wasn't the only pivotal event of 2004. It was also the year that a Venezuelan businessman named Carlos Dorado came knocking on the door of Isolda Pinedo Kahlo, Frida's niece. You see, Carlos wanted to help. He'd had no idea who Frida Kahlo was until he saw 2002 biopic starring Salma Hayek, and he was struck. It was a great story, great aesthetics. There was an opportunity here. He'd made his fortune mostly in banking and currency exchange, but he'd also had some very lucrative partnerships with big fashion houses through one of his other companies. So he does some digging, and he finds out who Frida's surviving relatives are. Her niece, Isolda, and Isolda's daughter, and he goes to pay them a visit. Now, his timing is impeccable. You see, Frida had passed away intestate, meaning she hadn't left a will. Under Mexican law, in this type of situation, the deceased's industrial property rights pass to the next surviving relative, which is Isolda. However, that right is only protected for 50 years after a person's dead. 50 years. 2004. So right at the time that Isolda and Mara are trying to figure out how to maintain control of Frida's image, Carlos shows up. He knows business. He knows how to file trademarks, how to commercialize and license at scale. Partnership with him would mean not only retaining rights to
Pretty
Frida,
graphic.
but also a lot of money. They just need the right
Yeah,
He
I
asks
guess
Isolda,
that's
"What
good
do you
enough.
remember the most about your aunt?"
Just shows how
I remember her
my
saying,
mind is at right
"I
now.
drink tequila to endure the heat." And he's like, boom, bingo, that's it, we're gonna call it tequila. Now,
I guess that's it.
Frida did like to drink.
I
Too
painted